welcome back to the Physio in a Box podcast. I'm Richard.
And I'm Vanessa.
And we're on our daily walk again.
We are.
We only record a podcast about once every 1 or 2 weeks, but we're on our daily walk with the dogs. So if you've not listened to us before, it's a podcast about physiotherapy. We're both a husband and wife physiotherapy team with the clinics in South Wales, and we're on a dog walk with our dogs like we do every morning. But what we found was that as we were on our daily dog walk, then we would be discussing things pertinent to patients and how we manage certain physiotherapy conditions. We thought it might be useful for resource for people. So that's why we started the podcast because we're having a walk rather than podcast, which is what everyone else does.
And so today, a little bit of a scene set. We are quite lucky. We live in Monmouthshire countryside. It is a beautiful Sunday morning, and the dogs are off running, and the birds are tweeting, and it's sunny. Outside of that, we're in the middle of. Is this week 5 of COVID-19?
Week 5, COVID-19.
So,
and everyone's still in lockdown.
Yep.
Of sorts.
Yep.
Although we've got the problem of trying to pick 10 friends now.
Yeah, we might be allowed to pick 10 friends. Yeah.
Well, that's in Scotland. Yeah, we're in Wales. So.
What if they do that?
Yeah.
What if they pick us and we don't pick them?
Yeah, exactly. What will we do then? I'm not sure I could cope with the rejection.
These are the... And do you have to pick your family? Of course you pick our family. Our
of course
family
we do.
Would be top.
Of course we do.
Of course we love
Especially
you all.
if they listen.
Yeah, if you listen, you'd be top of our list. So those are the exciting things that have been mulling through our mind. But no, and seriously, there's been a lot of sort of restrictions during this period. We can't see most of our patients. There's a few that we can in our lovely gear to treat, doing a lot of online telehealth.
And you know, that's working okay.
Yeah, it is.
For people who are in serious pain, we do have to obviously see them in person in emergencies, but for a lot of people, you know, it's just managing their exercises, and if they're coping well, then it's actually worked better than I thought it would. And I've been impressed with the buy-in from older people as well. I think this is upskilled.
Not to judge, but we're not great on technology.
But the fear was, I think, in health circles, with telehealth and online healthcare providers, etc., was that older people wouldn't engage. But what's come out of this COVID thing is that older people have upskilled really easily, and I think the misgivings that they would do that or engage in it have been unfounded, really.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I can use my mother. Shall I use my mother as an example? 75.
Go on then. Yeah, you must.
No, but she's 75, and
she gets everywhere else. You'll get on the podcast as well.
But the thing with Mum is we talk a lot, we do a lot of stuff together, but she has an iPad and she uses the tech to some extent, but she didn't really
to some extent is right.
She didn't really want to probably do extra stuff. She uses some apps, but with this, it has been a case, right, how do I get on YouTube so I can watch Andrew Lloyd Webber? How do I get on Zoom? We've done joint family Facebook chats, and that's been really key. So it has meant that now she can access more stuff.
Yeah, and I've noticed that with older patients that I've been in touch with this week as well. They're quite au fait with the whole Zoom catch up now, and they've got their place in their house where they can do that, and they know where they can do it, and they do their online Pilates classes and yoga classes like they always have been. And some people, I think, have been really good at keeping the community going.
Yeah. You've got that with your CrossFit, haven't you?
Yeah, our CrossFit box has been amazing. I go to a place called Celtic CrossFit in Newport in South Wales, and it's been absolutely amazing how they've kept the community going with different challenges, etc. They actually had a lip sync challenge this week where people have got to post lip syncs of their favourite songs onto Facebook, etc. It's been amazing. Some of the stands that people have been taking have been absolutely fantastic. I don't think it's really my thing.
No.
I think
maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'll leave that for everyone else. But it's just an example of how I think some communities have got stronger through this, if anything.
Yeah.
That's really lovely, I must say. But we have been having more patients this week with tendon problems, haven't we? And this sort of links on to the last podcast was on tennis elbow.
And we did say in that you might start to see a repetitive theme in certain things.
So that might reflect the repetitive theme that we see in the clinic.
Yes, it might be. Where are the dog leads?
They're in my backpack.
Ah,
yeah.
sorry.
So this week has been more tendon pain as well, as people sort of scale up a bit too quickly, really. Specifically, we've had quite a few Achilles tendon problems this week.
So, do you want to discuss? Do you want to discuss why?
Well, I think for these individuals in particular, they're runners, and they've noticed that in this lockdown they've had more ability to do what they enjoy doing, i.e. running.
It's been beautiful weather as well, hasn't it?
Whereas they would normally run 2 or maybe 3 times a week,
Bentley.
all of a sudden they're running every day for their daily exercise.
Oh, he's found a mouse.
And they've just overdone it and started having more time in their hands. They're running for longer and more intensely, and they're running up more hills, and all of a sudden they've overloaded their tendon to a point where it's become sensitive. But I mean, that can happen if you're, I don't know, some people have been skipping and doing different, like Joe Wicks is a good example. I think it's fantastic what that daily exercise is, but some of the more ballistic movements like jumping and lunging, some people don't do very much, and it puts their tendon under quite a significant load, which it's not used to.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So, you think, well, what do you mean? Why isn't used to? I use my legs. So
Yeah.
you have to explain. We have
But
to
that any jumping or plyometric loading just puts a massive strain on the tendon, which is capable of doing. That's the thing. And, we can run, jump, and hop into old age.
Yeah, but why doesn't it take it straight away? Why can't it just?
But if you scale up too quickly,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a fairly sedentary person and hasn't hopped, jumped, and leapt in the last sort of couple of years, then that tendon would have adapted to that reduced activity and become good at being in that sort of more sedentary state.
So
But if you take that tendon that's adapted to that more sedentary role and suddenly expect it to ramp up with repetition on a daily basis, then...
But what I'm saying is, why not? Why can't it? Why doesn't it just change?
Well, because it's slow to adapt. I mean, tendons don't have a great blood supply. Should we go across there first of all? Because otherwise you're going to lose him.
Yeah.
Just worried that we're going to lose our little border terrier Bumble.
Yeah.
He has a habit of just running off.
Especially when there's deer.
And stuff around. So tendons, that's what you're getting at, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tendons are slow to adapt. They don't have a great blood supply. They tend to get their nutrients from the blood supply from the bone and the muscle and the fluid around the tendon. So it doesn't upregulate quickly. That said, it responds favourably to load. So if your tendon will, if you load heavily through the tendon, a lot in the line of the tendon, I'll explain that in a moment now, that tendon will adapt and respond by getting stronger.
So basically, the problem's been is that people have worked to some level or not. Even you might have been fit beforehand, and then they've gone, brilliant, I've now got the time to get super fit, I'm going to push it, and then their body's capable of it, their cardiovascular system is capable of it, but after maybe a couple of weeks, because tendon's a bit slow, the tendon's going, I can't do that, and people are like, why?
Yeah, because the muscles around it can adapt and the bones can adapt quicker than the tendon can.
Yeah.
So you'll have the and your heart and lungs can adapt quicker than that as well. So you'll have the physical capability of maybe running for longer, but that tendon, without the relative rest and recuperation period, just won't adapt. It needs to be offloaded a little bit to be able to adapt, to be able to move forward, and actually sometimes a more stepwise approach needs to be adopted.
So what should people do?
Well, I think there's a bit of a difference between exercising to get stronger and exercising to improve the tensile loading on your tendon. As I said, tendons like to do work, but they like to do work in a certain manner. You can heavily load through a tendon, but you want to do it slow and in a controlled manner as well. So you don't want to be too wobbly.
So we've done specific videos for this as well, haven't you? Because it's quite hard to describe.
Yeah, so for instance, if you take Achilles tendon problems, which is what people have been coming in with this week, we've got some calf raise exercises on the website, which is a go-to place. It's quite good if you've got Achilles tendon problems, just to start off with those exercises. But you want to do them very slow, so that tendon is kept under load for a long period of time.
So under load, you mean under stretch?
Under strain.
Under strain, so it's
working.
So
you might do, say, a 5-second lowering, a hold at the bottom so there's no bounce, and a 5-second ascent. So that tendon is under load for the maximum amount of time. And that's the key thing with that, is the length of time the tendon's under load. You don't want any jerky movements. You don't want to bounce at the bottom of the movement. You don't want any fast movements.
Where that came from in this bounce?
Well, there's some in sport and in things like weightlifting and that sort of thing, that bounce has benefit because you've got the stretch recoil of the muscle actually allows you to produce higher loads and lift higher weights, etc. So that recoil helps you spring along when you're running. But when you're treating a tendon and when you want to make it, if your focus of an exercise is to strengthen a tendon, you want that tendon to be under load for the maximum amount of time. But the thing is, you only want to do it between 5 and 10 minutes a day, in any one go.
It's just a slow, short. And I think sometimes that's hard for patients, that what we're asking them to do doesn't look like a lot. Everyone seems to think that you need to do something, wham, and hit it. And I think a lot of the time we go to people, right, slow it down. And you're like, that's all I want you to do. Yep, but you just got to do it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I was reading an article about this the other day, and it was talking about. Yeah, you could scoot down there a bit more.
Yeah. Sorry,
just deciding which way we're going to go. It was talking about the optimal way of doing this, and the best way of thinking about it was doing just 5 to 10 minutes in the morning to get that tendon woken up, as it were. Engaged and adapting from the word go. But then you do that for 5 or 10 minutes, but then let it rest for the best part of between 6 and 12 hours really. But then you need to come back to it and do it at the other end of the day as well, so that you're punctuating doing it twice a day but either end of the day, so that tendon has a chance to recover. But then you need to hit it again with another 5 or 10 minute burst of exercises. So that's why when you're doing an Achilles tendon rehab exercises, the exercises specific to the Achilles tendon should be done twice a day, either end of the day, so that tendon is tensioned, it's allowed, given time to respond and recover, and then you go again to tension it again to help build that sort of tensile loading in the tendon. It works quite well actually, in a way to reduce the pain. Some people come in and they're super painful to begin with, in which case you start with them just doing what we call an isometric load, which is just holding, in the case of the calf raise, you'd hold them over the end of a step in that mid-range position, so they're just putting load through that tendon in that place, and only when they're comfortable with that and comfortable with the calf raises, they progress to those exercises at home.
I think it's important to realise as well that we're talking about Achilles tendon problems here, but the tendon is like the fail-safe bit that it's the fall guy in lots of things. So if you're not using your calf properly, you can still get plantar fascia pain. You can still get what they call police and heel. Something else is being overloaded. So it doesn't always have to be, right, it's specifically this. That isometric hold to get the calf stronger, to allow better control around the lower limb, it is beneficial, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that people do. I remember when we went on one of the physios who's doing her PhD in tendons, and there was a guy there from Clifton Rugby Club, and he said they had really good results with the rugby players who, I'm not suggesting you do this, but the rugby players were going to play no matter what, and they did 3 30-second isometric holds for the game, and it gave them more of an ability to do it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, when you look at the research on this at the moment, there's lots of interventions that have been talked about in terms of injections and different intervention, etc. But compared with progressive loading of a tendon, those other treatments aren't that great, really.
Yeah, but those other treatments can be all sparkly and a fix.
Yeah, but they make people a lot more money.
Yes, this makes you no money.
Not that I'm a cynic,
No.
but I have been a physio for 20 years. You do see things come and go, and
then come again and go again.
And go again, yeah. And things with the bright lights.
And what runs through all of it is the best thing at fixing your body by far is your body.
And moving it.
And moving it.
And very rarely do you need to stop moving.
Yes.
Stopping moving actually has been shown to be detrimental to recovery.
Yeah.
Even in some cases of bone healing I was reading the other day. So it's important that we keep moving. It's important we control for that movement, but that we load heavily through these tendons. And the other thing is that you do need to put some weight on this as well. So if you think that when you're in the case of Achilles tendon problems, 7 times your body weight goes through your Achilles tendon when you run. So just doing body weight is probably not going to be enough. You do need to strap on a rucksack with some extra load, just to start accommodating that tendon to heavy loading, because that's what it has to do. And if you're doing it in that slow, controlled manner, you will fatigue, but that's okay.
You need to fatigue.
First of all, you need to fatigue muscles to get.
Fatigue is what you probably feel as ache.
Yeah, but in pure terms, it means you can't do any more. Really, you need to go to a point where you can't complete another repetition. But from this tendon perspective, we need regular activation.
Bumble!
Twice a day, but we need heavy activation as well, and that's why. So Ness has just run off to. I think Bumble's eating something quite unsavoury in the undergrowth. But so anyway, I'll get back to what I was talking about.
No.
So you need that regular activation, but you need heavy loading as well, because the tendon responds to that favourably. I think, oh gosh, I'm not sure what Ness just picked up, but it doesn't look great. And that will aid your return to running then, because you're trying to get that tendon strong enough to be able to cope with the forces that running asks for. So if every stride is 7 times your body weight going to that tendon, just if you start doing the maths on that someone who's, say you're really lightweight, you're 50 kilograms in weight, which is probably about, quick maths, 7-8 stone, 50 kilograms there?
Yeah, I think George about 50, about 7.
Then that's still 350 kilograms going through your tendon with every stride when you're running. And there's a high volume exercise as well. So we do need these tendons to be able to withstand heavy load. You need to be safe when you're doing it, obviously. I'm not saying you've got to strap 350 kilograms onto your back, but you do need to think about starting with 10% of your body weight to begin with, and then scaling up from there. As you're able to, what I would normally say is people, once they can do 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 10 to say 15, they strap a backpack on their back and put 10% of their body weight in that backpack and start the exercises again. Okay, you won't be doing maybe 3 sets of 10 to 15, then you might have to reduce the number of reps you do, but you'll get better with that, get stronger when you reach 3 sets of 10 to 15 on that comfortably, maintaining that slow, controlled, metered approach to the exercise. You add another 10% on, so you're slowly progressing the loading that tendon is capable of doing. Now, one thing, people who listen to last week's podcast though about tennis elbow will see that there's quite a lot of similarities in the way we approach tendons, and the truth is it's very similar, because
Still a tendon?
It's a tendon,
yeah.
And that's how tendons respond. So you do this slow, controlled activation.
You activate the muscle, you control the muscle to control the tendon.
And there's similar protocols for patella tendon problems.
That's your kneecap tendon.
And even hamstring tendon problems.
And your shoulder tendons, you still got to load it.
So that slow but reasonably heavy loading is really beneficial. But like we said with the tennis elbow last week, I'm going to ask you why this has come on. Have you stepped up your training too quickly? In which case, that might be something you need to address to get over this long term. Or is there some sort of other movement dysfunction going on here? So that you're loading through your Achilles more than you need to.
Or I found as people that their running might not have changed, but their work might have. So suddenly they've had they're more sedentary. So their running is their release. They've been promoted in work. So instead of being the manager on the say in the factory, they are now like a floorman manager. They're an office manager. So their daily work is now, they're not walking around loading and loading and loading. They're sitting, or they've got to drive to different sites. So they're sitting, and then they get home, and generally they still go for the same run, but they're like, but what happened? And that's why, so you've got that.
A perfect example of that is people who are tradesmen, like carpenters and etc. As they become more senior, they become site managers and then project managers, etc. And that they've gone from a super physical job, which means they're self-sustained in terms of their strength and activity and their tendon health, etc. And then they become increasingly more sedentary. And
the body gets grumpy with that, doesn't it?
Well, it just adapts to the new norm.
Yeah, but then they're still doing the old stuff of the ballistic.
But when you have that expectation of yourself and what you should be able to do physically at the weekend warrior sort of mentality, then your body comes out in pain.
And should we bring up the elephant in the room with all of this as well, is that as we've talked about, these things happen as you progress. What also happens as you progress generally in your career is you age.
Yeah.
And so I think quite a lot of the time, a lot of the patients, we might see the young acute ones who've just suddenly upped their training, but a lot of the time we'll see people our age who are mid-40s and they're the ones who are stuck in this limbo, busy with, even your home life's busier because you're not running as much. The kids, you're running the children around to everything.
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually. How we've noticed that as the boys, we got two teenage boys, and they're pretty active, and they go row and they play hockey and all the rest of it. And we like to think we're pretty active, and we have, on the face of it, we haven't got a sedentary job either. We're on our feet pretty much all the day.
Yeah.
But if I don't go and do anything else either end of the day, like a run or a CrossFit session or something like that, I'll only do 5,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Because we don't move as much as people think, as you might think. But what I tend to find is that if I'm running Tom to his hockey match or something like that, I've got to really make more of an effort to try and fit my training in then as well.
And you're better at that. I'm not as good as that. And what I'm trying to say as well is added onto that, the actual aging process means the tissues are weaker as well. So it's like a perfect storm.
Yeah. And some people cope with it better than others. Like anything. Some people don't get these tendon problems. Other people do. They might have a similar lifestyle, but the same thing. One person gets a heart problem, the other person doesn't.
Yeah.
Depends on the makeup of your tendon and how genetically lucky you are, I suppose. But for the people who present to clinic with tendon problems, and specifically Achilles tendon problems, because that's probably one of the most regular, is that tends to be how it happens. The other thing we haven't mentioned is coming back from injury.
Yeah.
So, but it amounts to the same thing.
Yeah.
You've had a period of layoff because of another injury, and then you come back and think you can just, my knee problem's all sorted, I'll just crack on now then.
But then you get the patient saying, I don't know what's happened, I'm falling apart. And I'm like, no, it is a little bit of a house of cards because it has a knock-on effect.
Yeah. So then when someone comes back from significant knee surgery and they've had, say, 6 months out of a game, then part of the rehab process is to load the other tendons and the other parts of the body incrementally to prevent them from becoming a problem.
And that's why I do say to patients, sometimes they're like, right, I've had knee surgery, when should I start physio? Well, day one, or actually
Yeah.
before you do it. Not that you're going to do a lot on that knee, but that knee is attached to that hip and that back and that shoulder.
And part of the prehab process, the part of getting you strong beforehand, is to get your tendons stronger
Yeah,
so that there's the relative layoff you have to have. You're coming into it as a stronger place. So that deterioration, you're deteriorating from a higher point rather than a lower point.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so that covers about that.
Oh, that's a bit longer than I thought, actually.
We
We've been going for quite a while there.
Talking a lot.
We just got really excited
We
with
did.
tendons.
We do get. We're
We're like
geeks.
physio geeks.
We are such geeks. But the human body is amazing, and
Yeah.
you really, I mean, I'd tear my hair out when you see these things that are going to fix you. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And even COVID-19 can show us that. Nothing
Yeah.
can fix you like your body can fix you.
But the good
So-
news is that if you have Achilles tendon pain,
Yeah.
this loading program does work.
Yeah.
And then you've got to try and sort out
I think
the reasons why this came on.
The gold standard for the loading was done in the Netherlands, wasn't it? And it's a 3-month loading program of the exercises similar to on our website. And it gives a 70% reduction in pain.
Which is pretty decent, really.
Pretty decent
And then it's
reduction.
up to you to be patient with yourself. And
Yeah.
and also to look at why this came on. Is there a movement dysfunction? And that tends to be why you go and see a physio at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to diagnose that yourself.
Yeah, we can't do that to ourselves.
But
so-
at least what we hope is that if you start on this program, then when you turn up to your physio, you've gathered the low-hanging fruit so you can get the most value from that interaction with that person, and they can give you the most bang for your buck, as it were.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to leave it there.
Yeah.
So if there's anything else you'd like us to cover,
Well, remember
get
to
in
go
touch.
to the website, which is www.physioinabox.com. Our patients, you will have a coupon code, so that'll give you free access. And the videos are all there.
and also follow us on Instagram
And Facebook.
and Facebook
And Twitter.
and Twitter.
But-
Don't do much on Twitter.
Don't do much on Twitter. Twitter's just looking at the world ranting at each other. So.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cesspool of just
It's really grumpy.
It's just every grumpy person
Yeah,
just being
it's just-
grumpy with everyone
It's just
else.
like a room of arguing.
Yeah. So rather than get
We're
that,
not in for that.
deal with a hateful mob, then we'll probably.
No, we're
Instagram's
gonna-
a much more cuddly place to be.
So we can put nice pictures of us out on our walk. If you listen, you can hear the birds. And and it's a beautiful sunny day, and we're now going to stop recording and we're going to run around the woods.
Don't sound so gutted.
You know.
Anyway, on that bombshell, we better say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Come on, Bence.
Bumble. Put that down. What? I don't even know. Bumble, drop. Come here. Bumble. Come.